So when did ancient humans finally say, enough of this trading chickens for sandals nonsense? And who actually invented money first? That's exactly what we're breaking down today. The full story, the real origin. And I promise you, what you're about to hear is nothing like what they taught you in school. Imagine you wake up tomorrow and every bank account in the world is wiped clean. Every dollar, every coin, gone. How do you eat? Well, you'd probably do what humans did for thousands of years. You trade. You go to your neighbor and say, I'll give you 3 fish for a bag of grain. Simple enough. But here's the problem. What if your neighbor doesn't want fish? What if he wants wood? And the guy with wood wants cloth. And the guy with cloth wants fish, but only on Tuesdays. This was the daily nightmare of ancient human life. Economists call it the double coincidence of wants. Basically, for a trade to work, both people need to want exactly what the other has at the same time. Therefore, the bigger communities got, the more impossible this became. You couldn't build a civilization on a system that broken. Something had to change. So the question is, what was the first thing humans grabbed and said, okay, this is what we're all agreeing has value? The answer might genuinely surprise you. The earliest forms of money weren't coins, weren't gold, weren't even metal. They were cowrie shells, small, smooth, easy to carry, hard to fake. Around 1200 BC, and possibly even earlier, these tiny shells were being used as currency across China, Africa, and South Asia. People assigned them value, traded them, saved them. But here's where it gets interesting. Shells only worked because everyone in that community agreed they had value. The shell itself? Worthless. It's a shell, it came from the ocean. Therefore, what ancient humans actually invented wasn't money. It was agreement, a shared belief that this object represents value. And that idea changed everything. Because once humans figured out that value could be assigned to any object, not just food, not just tools, the entire concept of trade exploded. But cowrie shells had one massive flaw. They didn't scale. So who was the first civilization to actually formalize money, to build a real system around it? Because somebody had to go first. Most historians point to one place, Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, roughly 3000 BC. The Sumerians, one of the earliest known civilizations on Earth, created something called the shekel. Not a coin, not paper. It was a specific weight of barley grain or silver. If you owed someone labor, you paid in shekel. If you bought land, you paid in shekel. If you broke the law, yes, there were actual fines. You paid in shekel. Therefore, for the first time in human history, there was a standardized unit of value. Something everyone in that society agreed on. Something that could be measured, recorded, and transferred. But the Sumerians didn't stop there. They also invented something that might be even more important than money itself. They invented debt. Clay tablets found in ancient Mesopotamia show records of loans, interest rates, repayment schedules, written in stone, literally. So the next time someone tells you debt is a modern problem, it's actually 5,000 years old. But here's the twist most people never hear about. The Sumerians weren't alone, because almost at the same time, on the other side of the world, a completely different civilization was doing something remarkably similar, and nobody talks about it. Ancient China. Around the same period, 2000 to 3000 BC, Chinese communities were using cowrie shells as standardized currency in ways that were surprisingly sophisticated. But what makes China's story unique is what came next. When shells became scarce because demand was growing faster than the ocean could supply them, the Chinese did something nobody else had done. They made fake ones out of bronze. Therefore, China didn't just use money. They manufactured it. They industrialized the concept. And by 1000 BC, bronze was being cast into the shape of tools, knives, spades, and used as currency. The shape didn't matter anymore. The metal did. Therefore, by the time coins as we know them appeared, around 600 BC in Lydia, modern-day Turkey, humans had already spent thousands of years building toward that moment. The coin wasn't the beginning of money, it was the graduation. But here's the real question, the one that actually matters. Why did humans invent money at all? What were they really trying to solve? Here's the honest answer. Money wasn't invented because humans were greedy. It was invented because humans were ambitious. The moment communities grew beyond a certain size, beyond what one person could know, trust, and trade with directly, they needed a system. A language of value that strangers could speak to each other. Money was that language. But what's fascinating is that every single form of money in history, shells, grain, bronze, gold, paper, and now digital numbers on a screen, all of them work on the exact same principle the ancient Sumerians figured out 5,000 years ago: shared belief. Therefore, money was never really about the object. It was always about trust, collective human trust in a system. And that system, that invisible agreement between strangers, is literally what built civilization as we know it, which means the most powerful force in human history isn't gold, it isn't technology, it isn't even war. It's the fact that billions of people, across thousands of years, all agreed to believe in the same idea. And they still do. Every single day. So the next time you pull out your wallet or tap your phone to pay for something, just remember, you're not just spending money, you're participating in the oldest agreement in human history, one that started with a handful of shells and a clay tablet in ancient Iraq. If you found this interesting, you're going to want to watch this next one.